Okay, so this video was going to be just one whole video like my other top 20 list, but yeah, this is those tend to be really long, so I guess just to give me some free time so I don't end up burning myself out, or just to either keep you guys in suspense or so I can put more effort into them. I'm going to split this into two parts. Today we'll be uploading the first part of the top 20 SpongeBob episodes video, and then I don't have an exact date, but eventually I'll post the second half where I'll talk about the next half of the episodes. So the first part will be talking about number 20 through 11, and the second part will be talking about the top 10. But yeah, anyways, I'll probably be uploading another video, and it'll be ranking all the Wendy cards in South Park Phone Destroyer, since I just recently got Shield Maiden Wendy. But yeah, enough chatter, let's move on to the intro. What is up, my fellow Harley Riders? This is the Perpetuating Party of Patriots. Now, I have finally decided to make this video. Yeah, like I've said in plenty of videos, there was a top 10 SpongeBob episodes video I did make a while ago, and yeah, it's not very good in my opinion, so today, we're going to be doing a top 20 SpongeBob episodes list. Well, it's my top 20 personal favorite episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. Now, this list is entirely my opinion, so if you disagree, I respect your opinion, and you can disagree with me. Also, I guess there's a little bit of a bit of a disclaimer. A majority of the episodes that are on this list are going to be from the first three seasons. Now, as I have stated before, I do not think a majority of the modern seasons are bad. Crap, I actually really love seasons 4 or 5, and I also really enjoy 9, even though I know some people hate it. And there are good episodes in 6 through 8 as well. I haven't seen a whole lot of seasons 10 and 11, but I've heard they're good, so I might check them out soon. But yeah, a lot of the list is going to be from the first 3 seasons, but don't, I guess, panic. There are a couple later season episodes that I do really enjoy. But yeah, I guess to kick this list off, let's start off at the number 20 spot. Alright, starting this list off at the number 20 spot, we have the episode Karate Choppers from season 1. Yeah, this episode was pretty entertaining in my opinion. Basically, the plot just revolves around SpongeBob and Sandy had doing karate, and SpongeBob gets a bit too carried away with his karate to the point where he just thinks pretty much anyone is Sandy trying to beat him, and yeah, he ends up getting nearly fired for it. Or at one point he does end up getting fired, but yeah, when Mr. Krabs tells him off, he tries his best not to do karate, but Sandy will not give up. And yeah, basically, SpongeBob's just standing out, and then Sandy tries to beat the crap out of him or karate chop him, and then Mr. Krabs ends up firing him. And then basically he lets him off with a warning as a last chance. And then they both hang out in the park, and yeah, they start doing a bunch of freaking karate on sausages and crap. And yeah, then Mr. Krabs actually sees the usefulness in SpongeBob. Well, first there's actually one scene I'd like to specifically point out. In particular, SpongeBob actually, I guess, showing a little bit of maturity and even just fested up, like, I can't help myself, you're just gonna have to fire me. I really like that, because it shows that SpongeBob is taking responsibility for his actions. But I think my favorite part was actually the last part of the episode where they're like, I love karate, I love karate, I love money, I hate all of you. I love that fucking part. But yeah, this episode also had a lot of really cool action scenes. I thought those were really cool to watch. And yeah, this is probably one of my personal favorite episodes from the first season. Honestly. And why it's number 20, I don't really have any reasons. It's just that I think the next 19 are better. Anyway, let's move on to the next spot. And at the number 19 spot, we have the episode Squidville from season 2. So, basically, the plot of this episode goes is Squidward's just trying to enjoy his day, and then SpongeBob and Patrick are fucking around with a reef blower, and yeah, it pushes Squidward to the limit to where he just wants to move out. And then a random TV pops out of nowhere and advertises this place called Tentacle Acres. And Squidward actually ends up moving there, and at first it seems like it's paradise for him. Then it turns boring for him, and eventually it gets to the point where SpongeBob and Patrick both try to give an apology cake when they go to Tentacle Acres. But basically, it also, again, gets to the point where Squidward ends up finding the stuff that used to annoy him fun. Like, for example, the reef blower. He keeps playing with it, and basically he causes chaos in Tentacle Acres. And yeah, it gets to the point where everyone there is just ganging up on him and angry at him. And yeah, I also really do enjoy the scenes where SpongeBob and Patrick are actually trying to find out who Squidward is. And then Patrick ends up finding a freaking fire hydrant. That's a funny moment, in my opinion. Also, I love the scene in the episode where Squidward uses the reef blower to make it to where one of them has 2 pairs of eyes and the other one has 2 pairs of noses. And he's like, "What are you looking at?" I thought that was a really funny segment. But yeah, I overall really liked Squidville. I think it had some of the best jokes in the series, in my opinion. Or it was one of the most funny episodes, in my opinion. And I also just thought it was a really cool concept that they did handle pretty well. But yeah, this is not going to be the last Season 2 episode on the list. There's going to be a lot of episodes from the season on here. Anyway, let's move on to the next spot. And at the number 18 spot, we have the episode Spy Buddies. Yeah, this is easily one of my favorite episodes from the 5th season. And here, I'll explain why it is. So basically, the plot is basically just starts off with Mr. Krabs checking the Krabby Patty secret formula, and then SpongeBob busts in. I don't know what he was even asking, but Krabs appoints him and Patrick to be spies. So basically, what they keep on doing is they freaking spy on Plankton's every move, and they start jotting down stuff that's incredibly date or just mundane tasks, like. He went to, like, one of them is he went to the baby store or the baby clothes store and to get stamps and stuff. And, yeah, the hijinks that's in this episode that involve Plankton are very funny, in my opinion, and they did lead to a lot of humorous stuff. And, yeah, especially the ending where they actually try to bust into the chum bucket and, yeah, fucking Patrick firing lasers out of his ass with his laser pants. That was pretty funny. But, yeah, then it leads to them crashing the Krusty Krab, and then at the end they make a joke about how at the end of spy movies and stuff, it turns out this person who you thought was this person was actually this person, and other stuff. I've apparently heard people don't like this ending, but I personally actually really found it funny, and it pretty accurately portrayed how most spy movies end, and yeah, personally I just really enjoyed Spy Buddies. I think it's one of those episodes that I would point to when someone says, "Name one good modern SpongeBob episode." And yeah, this and quite a few others I would point to. But yeah, let's move on to the next spot. And at our number 17 spot, we have the episode Just One Bite. Yay! Here we have one of my favorite Season 3 episodes, which Season 3 is my favorite season of the show. But yeah, let's talk about this episode. Firstly, it just starts off with regular Krusty Krab stuff. It actually did lead to mayonnaise, or a meme that involved that a Harold fish freaking chugging mayonnaise forever. That was I don't know why, but I do find that meme to be pretty funny. And then Squidward utters a word that most people or utters a sentence that most people didn't know about. What is it? Well, Squidward's never had a Krabby Patty, so SpongeBob tries to get him to try forever, and he will not budge, and when Squidward does eventually try the Krabby Patty, he ends up loving it, but he makes it look like he hates it, so that way SpongeBob and the others won't rub it in his face, from what I'm guessing. And then, after that, Squidward tries every tactic that he can to try and get another Krabby Patty, or try to taste another Krabby Patty. And, yeah, it eventually leads to Squidward sneaking into the Krusty Krab at night. And, yeah, right here there was actually a deleted scene that was in this episode. Basically what happens is when Squidward actually tries busting into the Krusty Krab, uh, a certain tub of what he thinks is water drops on the ground, and then when he finds out what it actually is, that being gasoline, he ends up getting burned up, which, yeah, it's very understandable why it got banned, or why that scene got deleted, but, yeah, the clip of it's actually still available on YouTube, I believe. If I can find it, I will link it in the description. But then Squidward tries busting into the Krabby Patty vault, and then SpongeBob pops in, and then, utters probably one of the best SpongeBob memes, in my opinion, where he's like, "You like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward?" Yeah, even after seeing it loads of times, I still find it pretty funny. And then Squidward freaking chows down on pretty much every Krabby Patty in the vault, and then he explodes. But, yeah, Just One Bite is, I think this one's a fan favorite, and, yeah, I can definitely see why it is one, because I love it to death, pretty much. But, yeah, I remember I used to have this in, I think, either the top 3 or at least the top 5. Now it got pushed back to number 17, but know that I still really love this episode. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. And at the number 16 spot, we have the episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 3. Yeah, this is easily one of the best Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy centered episodes, in my opinion. But anyway, let's talk about the plot. It turns out Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are actually going out on vacation, so they leave SpongeBob and Patrick to guard the Mermalair, which, yeah, I know it was said, I know I said it was a Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy centered episode, but, yeah, it really isn't. It's mainly just the title that says it. But, anyway, moving on. Eventually, SpongeBob and Patrick are just dicking around and shit, and then they find, Man Ray encased in, I think, frozen mayonnaise, from what I believe. And then they eventually leads to Patrick pulling a lever, I think, and then freeing Man Ray, and then Man Ray tricks SpongeBob and Patrick into thinking he's good, and then SpongeBob and Patrick teach him how to be good, and then, yeah, a lot, again, like most SpongeBob episodes, a lot of hijinks ensue. One of my favorite scenes in the episode, by far, is the Patrick and Man Ray wallet scene. You know, the one where he's like, "Is this your wallet?" And he's like, "It's not my wallet." But, yeah, that is, I could definitely see why that's a fan favorite one. And also, I guess to just talk about Man Ray before we continue, he is probably one of my favorite SpongeBob villains, actually. I'd probably say at least in the top 3. The only real villain I'd say I think I like more than him is Plankton, honestly. But, yeah, it eventually leads to Man Ray getting so tickled to the point where he asks SpongeBob and Patrick to let him go by saying please, and then, yeah, he basically just, runs rampant in Bikini Bottom, strewn up everything, but, yeah, it turns out he was the tickle belt that even though the remote was busted, it's still, the tickleness of it injects into his DNA from what I see, and, yeah, and then there's also the Ball of Confusion, which I think is cool, but, yeah, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 3 is my second favorite Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode. My favorite will be much higher on the list, but, yeah, this is still a great episode, and also one of my favorites from Season 2. But, anyway, let's move on to the next one. And at the number 15 spot, we have the episode The Fry Cook Games. So, the plot of this episode revolves around, well, Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob getting ready for the Fry Cook Olympics, which I think is held every 4 or so years. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's related to the Olympics. And then Patrick was just dicking around and shit, wanting to join SpongeBob in the Fry Cook Olympics as a contestant. But then SpongeBob goes full on gatekeeping and says Patrick can't do it because he's not a fry cook or something. I don't know why I said gatekeeping, but yeah, it eventually leads to the point where they start a rivalry, and Patrick signs up under Plankton as a Chum Bucket employee, and then it leads to SpongeBob and Patrick competing in the Fry Cook Games, which involves a lot of events very, very similar to the Olympic Games. I think there's the pole vaulting, long jump, stuff like that. But one of my favorite scenes, and actually probably my favorite scene, is the scene where Patrick's trying to do the lawn pole jump, and then he ends up, let me just say, applying pressure to a grease fryer or whatever it's called. And then he ends up firing it at one of the crowds of fishes, and then the dude puts on a freaking fish sticks, get your fish sticks here. Yeah, that scene was really clever in my opinion. And also, let's not forget at the end, where SpongeBob and Patrick have a full-on fight, which I will admit is pretty entertaining in my opinion. I also think it's interesting how, even though SpongeBob had fake muscly arms, he wasn't able to lift a glass of juice, but now he's ripped and can fight. But yeah, one thing I've learned over the years is don't question the sponge. But yeah, this one also leads to another really funny scene in my opinion. It's where SpongeBob takes a pencil and then erases the part of Patrick, and then just turns it Rick, and then Patrick screams the you-know-what saying. And yeah, towards the end, they do befriend each other again, and then walk off into the sunset. And yeah, it's probably one of the saddest scenes I've ever seen. Okay, I'm joking, but yeah, I really do enjoy the Fractured Games. It's another one of my favorites from Season 2, because not only is it funny, but it's also entertaining as hell to watch to me. But yeah, let's move on to the next spot. And at the number 14 spot, we have the episode Steel Crane. Well, what do you know? Another modern SpongeBob episode that I like, or it's one from Season 4, which is another one of my personal favorite seasons. And yeah, this is one of those episodes that honestly feels like a pre-movie one, but yeah, first let's talk about it. Basically, the plot revolves around Mr. Krabs buying a claw machine for the Krusty Krab. Oh boy, I wonder why he did it. Definitely not obvious in the slightest, but yeah, it eventually leads to the point where Squidward tries to win a game in the claw machine, just as, I guess, for shits and giggles, and then he loses, and then goes on to his normal day. That is, if SpongeBob didn't try the claw machine and he ended up winning something. But yeah, it eventually leads to the point where Squidward is obsessed with the game and just wants to win, where he just keeps fucking putting in quarters, or yeah, I think it's quarters, into the claw machine, and he just keeps on and keeps on and keeps on failing. And then SpongeBob does teach Squidward how to win at the game and shows him a secret. And then Squidward actually ends up winning. And after that victory, he starts acting like a cocky prick. And yeah, he basically just runs around basically bullying everyone, saying, I'm a winner. And I love the scene where he basically makes fun of a kid for losing. And when he is making fun of him, the kid just freaking kicks him in the leg. I'd say that was pretty well deserved, but yeah, it eventually gets to the point where Squidward freaking operates a actual claw machine. You know, those big ones where they have those giant things on them that pick up stuff? Yeah, those. And yeah, he ends up wrecking shit. And yeah, Squidward gets some very well-deserved comeuppance, in my opinion. And yeah, this episode was a very entertaining watch, and I think it's probably one of the funniest episodes of the 4th season, in my opinion. I don't know if I would say it is the funniest, but in my opinion, it's one of my favorites from Season 4, and yeah, that's all I really had to say about Steel Crane. Just know that I think it's a really good episode. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. And at the number 13 spot, this one will probably be controversial. We have the episode The Great Snail Race. Yeah, this is by far one of the most hated episodes of the first 3 seasons. Like, I've seen people call this one of the worst episodes of, well, not the show, but a couple people, or by a couple I mean by a lot of, cite this episode as one of the worst episodes of season 3, or one of the few bad episodes of the first 3 seasons. I can't disagree more with that, and I'll explain why in a minute, but first I'll give a plot synopsis. Sorry. So basically, the plot of the episode revolves around Squidward actually getting a new snail. I forget what she's named. If someone does know her name, feel free to tell me. But yeah, he basically rubs it in the face of SpongeBob, you know, trying to get him angry and stuff. And then Squidward talks about a snail race that's about to start, and SpongeBob, being tempted by Squidward's cockiness, ends up signing up Gary to be in the race. And yeah, basically he just freaking pushes Gary in pretty much to his limits. And yeah, there is one scene that I do really love in this. It's particularly the part where Squidward and Patrick are standing outside of Spongebob's house and talking to him, giving him trash talk, and Patrick also ends up entering the race. But in particular, I love the scene where Patrick's saying he's hard as steel or something, and Squidward's like, Patrick, what are you standing on? And then Patrick is literally standing on Squidward. That was pretty freaking hilarious, in my opinion. And, yeah, it's kind of just one of those funny little goofs that I really get a kick out of. But, yeah, then SpongeBob actually just straight up friggin', again, pushes Gary when he doesn't even want to enter the race. But, yeah, admittedly, it was kind of, I don't know if I'd say heart-wrenching, but I don't know if I would say it's hard to watch, but the ending is very satisfying. But, yeah, then the actual race, or the actual day of the race begins, and, yeah, there is one pretty funny moment, in my opinion. It's when the old Snail champion is trying to make it to the fireplace, and then the mayor freaking grabs him and rushes him over there. I also like the part where the fan actually enters the announcer room, which I think is pretty funny. But, yeah, then the race actually starts, and, Snelly, I think is the snail's actual name, ends up freaking dominating Gary, and yeah, shown by how Gary's mental state is at the time, he freaking busts open, and I do mean literally. Although one scene that I do really like in this is where Snelly actually rushes back to Gary to comfort him. I thought that was a pretty sweet moment. And then at the end, they're just talking crap, and then Patrick actually ends up, his pet Rocky actually ends up winning the race, which is, I love that scene as well. And then Patrick actually has the winning trophy engraved to Squidward, and the part I love about that is that they actually misspelled his name to where instead of saying Squidward Testicles, it's Squidward Tortellini. But I really found that funny. And then Sandy out of freaking nowhere freaking uppercuts SpongeBob. I think it was because of a comment he made about Gary calling him like a girl or something. But yeah, I thought that was a really funny one. And now to talk about why I don't think this episode deserves as much hate as it gets. I've seen a lot of people pull the whole mean-spirited card, but honestly, again, I know I've said this in pretty much nearly every cartoon-related video I've made, but mean-spiritedness isn't enough to, I guess, call the whole episode bad, because, in my opinion, I actually thought it was a really funny episode, and even then, it did feel like SpongeBob did feel remorse for what he did to Gary, even if Gary kept telling him, but, yeah. Another thing, well, I just close the segment off, is not only is it a great episode, but it does portray the console wars pretty well. I know that's not a huge thing, but I just thought I'd point that out. Anyway, The Great Snail Race is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated SpongeBob episodes, and one I don't really think deserves the hate it gets, but yeah, let's move on to the next spot. And at the number 12 spot, we have the episode Patty Hype. Now, at one point, this was a contender for the top 3, but then I thought about some other episodes, and this one kind of got dragged down a bit. Still great, though. Anyway, let's actually talk about the episode. The Krusty Krab has been empty for, I think, the past couple of weeks or the past couple of days. And then someone ends up coming back into the Krusty Krab. And when Mr. Krab shows him around, the person complains about atmosphere and how the place has none of it. Also, I think it's funny how he's like, what's the atmosphere, underwater? But, yeah, it leads to the point to where Mr. Krabs and the others are trying to figure out an idea to bring life back to the Krusty Krab. And yeah, then this thing called the Shell Shack, they find out about the Shell Shack, and then they find out ideas to try to get people attracted to the store. The first one is Mr. Krabs burying himself alive, and that doesn't work. And then a genius move is made by SpongeBob. Basically, he just paints the Krabby Patties different colors, which, admittedly, I do think the kind of color palette it has looks pretty nice, but, yeah, then SpongeBob tries selling them at his house, and then, Harold, I could recognize by his look, laughs at him for just the Krabby Patties being multicolored. But yeah, then he actually tries it and finds out it's really good. And then SpongeBob gets a bunch of business at the store, or at his house, or at the Krabby Patty or Pretty Patty stand. But yeah. Then Mr. Krabs is watching the TV, and then the news comes on, and Mr. Krabs finds out about SpongeBob's Pretty Patties. Then it gets to the point where Mr. Krabs negotiates with SpongeBob about him taking over the stand, and SpongeBob has to go back to the Trusty Krab. And yeah, that's not the greatest idea on Mr. Krabs, because after he does do it and actually convinces SpongeBob to do it, the next day, Mr. Krabs, when he tries to sell more of the stuff, the customers end up getting really angry at him and demand a refund because of stuff being different parts of their body or stuff like that end up being different colors. And yeah, Mr. Krabs has a whole freaking angry mob after him, and SpongeBob, you can't hear what's going on outside because he's just so happy. But yeah, Patty Hype, I think, is another episode that I think this accurately portrays something else. And it's the hype out of, I guess, superficial things. I don't know. But, yeah, I just thought it was a really funny and entertaining episode to watch. Or a funny and entertaining episode to watch. Probably also one of my most watched episodes of the show. But, yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next spot. And at the number 11 spot, we have the classic pizza delivery. Well, what do you know? This episode's at the same spot it was at the previous list. Yeah, this was the number 11 spot as an additional extra on the last SpongeBob top 10 I made. But, yeah, here it is. It's still great. But, yeah, let's just talk about the episode. So, the episode starts off with, again, the store is about to close. And then, Mr. Krabs gets a call, or the Trusty Krab gets a call. And it turns out one guy thinks it's a pizza joint and orders a pizza. And, yeah, Squidward tries to negotiate with Mr. Krabs saying that they don't serve pizza. Then Mr. Krabs ends up making a pizza out of Krabby Patties, which I think that probably actually tastes pretty good, actually. And then Mr. Krabs assigns SpongeBob and Squidward to be pizza delivery men. And, yeah, while SpongeBob and Squidward are about to get ready, SpongeBob tells Squidward that he's not good at driving because he doesn't even have his license yet. Then Squidward pushes him. And then, yeah, they end up driving into what looks like the middle of nowhere. Then it seems like they pretty much go crazy. But, yeah, then SpongeBob and Squidward try to find their way back to civilization. And then SpongeBob and Squidward find a truck barreling down the street. And, yeah, they're trying, and when SpongeBob tries to pick up, or tries to get the guy's attention, he does some freaking dance moves, and, yeah, it turns out this scene spawned another meme as well, but, yeah, then SpongeBob and Squidward do a bunch of other stuff, and, yeah, it leads to the point where they're getting so hungry that Squidward tries to get SpongeBob to give him the pizza so he can eat something. Then SpongeBob finds a rock, or, yeah, I think it's a rock. Then Squidward tries to tell off SpongeBob that it's another crazy idea and that the pioneers are crazy. Then it turns out he can actually drive it. And, yeah, they eventually do get to the guy's place, and, oh boy, this scene. SpongeBob gives the guy the pizza, and then he complains about not getting a drink that he didn't even order. And, yeah, basically he shoves SpongeBob's face in. And, yeah, then SpongeBob goes back to Squidward, and he's just freaking crying, and, this scene I love a lot. Squidward actually grabs the pizza and marches up to the guy, and then, you know what he does? He freaking throws the pizza right in the guy's face, and, yeah, personally, I love this scene, because, it's one of those scenes that shows that Squidward actually does care about SpongeBob, even though how much he annoys him, but, yeah, overall, this is an episode that's another fan favorite, and, yeah, I can definitely agree. It's one of the best episodes and one of my favorite episodes from Season 1. Anyway, that's going to leave off the first part of my top 20 SpongeBob episodes video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the second part that I'll be making eventually.